Okay, are we on?
We're on. Wow.
Okay.
That was pretty cool. Why don't you keep doing that for an hour? I'd be happy.
Yeah, okay. All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our first live, my first live Facebook anyway. So hope you're all doing well out there. Steve, if you want to welcome everybody.
I know. Welcome, everybody. So we're on Facebook, YouTube, and we're also on the Drum Fantasy Camp Facebook. So welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us. And welcome, Dave. Thanks for doing this today.
Yeah, like I said, first time doing a live Facebook thing, so I'm happy to, like I said, I want to make sure and just say hey to everybody, ask that everybody's hopefully doing okay out there with the continuing situation. So, but this is all in an effort to, share a little bit of my stuff and all the stuff I've learned and, just create some positive influence and keep it going. So happy to be here.
Great. So it's my understanding you've been out of the country for a while. What's been up with you? What have you been doing?
Well, my lovely wife, Clivia Tanisi, is she's Italian. So I am fortunate to be able to go to Italy and stay there as long as I want to. I'm back in LA right now, but I was just in Italy for three months, and we had a great time. Had to come back here to handle some stuff though, so I'm looking forward to getting back to my wife as soon as possible. But yeah, I was able to do some work over there as well, some teaching, online teaching, and continuing to do that as well as doing stuff for the school, which is what we're kind of talking about today, our online school. A lot of projects going on. Kind of currently involved helping Chick Corea get a new electric band release going, which is kind of a compilation of some live shows we've done over the last few years. They've been kind enough to invite me into the mix and the production aspect a little bit, so I'm happy to be helping there. Also happy to say that I'm joining Autumn Hill Records, which is Rob and Mike Silverman in St. Louis, and I'm going to be releasing my live Dave Weckl Band performance from the Chesterfield Jazz concert that we played last year. So that's in the works to get released. And, I think, Steve, wanted to say that people in the school right now, you can actually see that performance as well as hear it, where the whole show is up there on video. So that's kind of part of what you get with joining the school. Right?
That's right. Yeah. So we have the full concert up there. Full HD, and it is in the school along with about 40 hours of other instruction by you and live footage. So I wanted to get into that a little bit because today, as I understand it, you wanted to go through a little taste of what you do in the hand technique course. Excuse me.
Yeah, well, it's obviously there's so much material up there on the school, but I'm a big proponent of foundation and trying to understand how important that is to be able, and the whole thing for me is to be able to be free to play. That's it. It's not about becoming a master technician. It's not about the technique for the sake of the technique. It's about creating a zone for yourself that just invites complete freedom, and that's my goal that I still try to practice to attain. So that I don't have anything in my way when I want to go play music, and that's the bottom line here. Even though in this pandemic situation where we're not playing live so much, if at all, I'm doing a lot of tracking for people and still having to play, and every time I get a track to play to, it's about the music. It's about coming up with the drum part. And some of them are challenging. If I hear an idea, if I want to play something, I got to have the foundational ability to be able to play what I hear, what I want to do. And if I can't, then it kind of puts me in a position to play something less than I want to create. That doesn't mean complicated or a bunch of notes. It just means maybe it's an independence thing that is necessary to pull off a certain groove. But 9 times out of 10, it comes down to where's your comfort zone here on the kit with your approach to how you sit at the kit, where the heights and the angles are, and then how you take the sticks and what that relationship is with the stick, your hands, and how that comes across body and soul into the music. So, yeah, so I talk about, I mean, it gets really detailed in the school, so I'll just give a little synopsis of, kind of the vibe. For me, it all starts with the ability to be in a position to take advantage of one very important thing, and that is to allow the sticks to work for you, okay? And what I mean by that is, thanks to Freddy Gruber, mostly, he was the one that really got me to understand kind of how the laws of physics apply to playing, where, a lot of us, me included, were taught in the beginning, to hold a stick here, and to, that this was the fulcrum and that was the contact point and the main concentration point of where everything happened. Now that's good and fine, but the problem with that is if you're focusing and you clamp down on the stick with the thumb and the first finger, what that kind of automatically does is pull the back of your hand off the stick. So you see a lot of guys trying to play like this where, if you just look at that from a common sense standpoint, you're only using, 20% of your hand, which it makes it really difficult to play anything. So simply by moving that focus, to the middle finger and the back three as far as a focus point of, where it happens, as far as the grip or the fulcrum, this becomes more like a pendulum when we're talking about an open stroke of bounce. And that's really what it's about. It's about understanding how to manipulate and control the bounce of the stick. Now, if we're in a controlled situation where we're playing soft, that open bounce doesn't happen all that much. Okay, so in that situation, I never let go of the stick with any of the fingers, and the front one, of course, is necessary to help control. But the whole thing with this grip is about understanding from a physiological standpoint how our bodies work. Okay, and using your wrist is this way. So we can also do this, but just from the way that like I said, the body, all of us work, that's a lot of strain on the wrists, and there's not much mobility here. There's not a lot to do when you have to incorporate fingers. And yes, absolutely, I'll use finger control for certain things if I'm gonna play a jazz thing, for example. I'll certainly be using finger control for those kinds of things. But when we're talking about just wrist position and using the wrist, this is kind of known. And if we're playing match grip in this position, it's it's known as the American grip position. This would be German, French is here. So there's a lot of ways to hold the stick, but I'm talking mostly about the wrist. All right, so. In this instance, I'm going to be trying to, anytime I'm playing wrists on the drums, and I'm playing soft, I'm going to be trying to be in this position, not this one, okay? So over here, American positioning. So that keeps in line with everything that I'm doing around the kit, with keeping this V in the sticks. I don't want to be like this, I don't, especially with traditional, but even with match grip, in this position around the kit instead of this way. So, like I said, just to be clear, there's a lot of ways to do this, and what I'm talking about today is certainly not the only way. There's a lot of ways to play. But for me, I've gone through a lot of different, aspects of trying to do this for many years, and this one it works the best for me so far. So, getting back to it, using the wrist this way, is kind of the focal point. Now, if we're talking about bounce and we're talking about middle finger, this is again, middle finger and thumb as the grip point. That's kind of the first exercise. We want to get the stick to bounce, but you'll notice the hand, I'm not doing anything. It's totally relaxed, and that's another key word to making this work. So now the point of this is to find the balance point. We got to find where the stick is balanced, so it's basically weightless. We don't want to have anything happening here that's feeling unnatural. So we want that place to be balanced on the stick. Now generally that's going to be Well, it's not going to be back here, let's put it that way, because here the stick doesn't want to come up, it just wants to go down. So if you think of this like a little pendulum, basically, from center, right, we got that kind of thing going on in the hand when we're talking about bounce, okay? So bouncing this way, when I put it into application all over the kit, I'm playing like this, okay? So if I'm on the drum set, if I'm playing single strokes, okay, so you can kind of see that the stick is bouncing, especially in an open stroke situation like this, all right? Steve, you're back on the air. You got something to interject here?
Well, yeah, I wanted to ask you about your position because it
Right.
seems like you talk a lot about your seating position as it relates to
Yeah,
that.
that's where I'm heading actually, because you know the balance point. When we get into the balance point, is you know, you can see the amount of stick come out back here. So the point is if I'm rebounding like this off the drum, there's a problem if you're sitting too low and the drum is too low that you're going to be hitting your leg. All right. So, kind of rule number one for me is to make sure that you're in a position when we come down and we make that stroke. Again, this is why I'm talking about the American position and the wrist position. We're not like this because that creates a whole other way of playing. So what happens is if you play like that, match grip or traditional, whatever, but if it causes a pushing situation, and that doesn't allow the sticks to come up and out of the drum and rebound, okay? So you're kind of defeating the purpose of the natural reaction of the stick of bounce if you're sitting too low and playing down on low drums. And a key giveaway is if your arms are extended down towards the drums. You'll notice when I'm in this position and I'm here, my arms are basically straight, okay? They come straight down because that's the most powerful point of the stroke. It ends there. You know, I could certainly keep going down, but by then I start straining things in my body and you kind of lose the contact point of being the most natural place, especially if we're utilizing molar technique, which is this kind of motion down to the drum, and that's the crack of the whip. That's where it stops. Everything is straight here. So the first thing that I always try to tell folks is to consider the seating position, because if I'm here and I stand up, you can't really see my legs too much, but the only thing that changes is the angle of the legs. Okay, so if I sit too low and I'm in this position and I'm on my leg, that's not good for this approach. I can't let the stick bounce this way. So it starts with sitting high enough, and you know, there's a lot that goes into this. I mean, there's a lot of great players that sit low and they do their thing the way they do their thing. So again, this is kind of, you know, my take on this, and you know, try it. That's all you can do is try it. And get your thighs to angle down towards your knees a little bit so that you do have this clearance, okay, back here. So when the stick is bouncing in a single stroke roll and you're playing your feet at the same time, right? I have that total freedom of being able to let the stick rebound, all right? So the drum set and everything around this seat position when you start sitting higher is all relative, okay? Like I said, this doesn't change, okay? If I stand up, it stays the same. It's kind of right below my belly button, basically where it stops, all right? So seating position up, drums up, closed eye test. This is the first thing that I talk about in the school as far as figuring out where you should be. So if you close your eyes and you come down this way and you stopped, well, when I do that, I want to be hitting a rim shot on the snare. I don't want to be thinking about it. That's built in, so I don't need to think about where that snare is. If you're playing traditional grip, that's a whole other set of circumstances where height and angle is concerned, in my opinion. Okay, with this grip, we're talking about the history coming from marching where the drum was this way and they're playing like this, all right? So if we take that and we try to put it to a drum set, it doesn't really make so much sense if we don't have the drums angled to accommodate the grip, all right? So that's why my kit, all right, is angled pretty drastically from left to right, starting with the snare drum. Might be a little bit hard to see from this angle, but you can kind of see from this angle that it's got the positioning. I'm straight here, right, not down. Okay, so I'm here. It correlates to the angle of the stick, all right? All right, same thing with the tom-toms around the rest of the kit. Starting with the floor tom, you might notice my floor tom's actually higher than my snare drum. That's because when I come over here with the traditional, I don't want to have to be bending any lower than I have to. And when I'm doing hand and foot combinations between the floor tom and the snare drum, I don't have to think about it either because it's kind of in line with each other, right? So if I'm doing kind of triplet-oriented exercises, okay, any of that type of stuff is very easy for me to get around because I'm dealing with something on the same plane that accommodates the grip. So, like I said, the traditional grip is a whole nother ballgame. And that, you know, I play this way because all of my favorite players, when I was growing up, you know, I come out of a jazz head kind of in school, and all my favorite players played that way, right? Everybody from Buddy Rich to Peter Erskine to, you know, Steve Gadd, all the great guys that I aspired to learn from and to emulate when I was young, played traditional. So that, you know, that's my schooling. And I made a decision to play traditional. This is my priority grip. And when I have a student that says, I play both ways, I play traditional and matched, my first response is, okay, that's a little bit of a problem because you can't set up the kit, in my opinion, to accommodate both grips 100% naturally, all right? There's gonna be a sacrifice somewhere. And I can say for me, when I was playing a lot more match grip, you know, 30 years ago, when I was playing a lot harder and, you know, and really damaging my body and killing myself, I used to have to wear Band-Aids on my hands and stuff like that, because I just wasn't really understanding that physics aspect. You had to bounce. That's changed. Yeah, certainly I don't play as hard as I did 30 years ago. I don't want to either, because most of the time the music doesn't call for that unless you're playing hard rock. And then, of course, there's times to play louder and harder. But having said that, the advantage of this approach, even if you're playing loud rock stuff, you know, if you're holding onto the sticks tight, right? If you're like this and you're playing like that and you're playing rock, okay? Where I'm not really letting the stick breathe, I'm not letting it live. You know, if I'm holding on tight, it sounds like that. So that's what your drum set's gonna sound like. So here you are playing hard and holding on tight, and you're basically compressing your sound, you're making it really small, and you know, you're fighting yourself for the most part. So by holding on looser, you know, and keeping, of course, manipulating, and this, you know, my thing with this is it's a 5-finger grip. So, you know, check out the difference. Here's that tight way again. Versus the looser way of relaxing, molar technique, letting the stick breathe. Number one, the sound is bigger. Number two, it doesn't hurt. And number three, it allows me to approach the music differently because I'm not so concerned about the physical aspect of trying so hard to do something that it becomes, number one, detrimental to the body. It hurts. So figuring out how to manipulate with this I don't want to, it is a looser grip, but it's a matter of where you're focusing priority of fulcrum and then how you're controlling. So there's one exercise that I give on the school that, because Tony Williams especially was a big proponent of playing from more of the back of the hand, all right? He was one that made it fairly known in his clinics, and when he talked about it, to play more from back here of gripping, right, instead of the other way, right? So, so in order to train the back of the hand, because I use the back of the hand quite a bit, especially if I'm doing this bounce technique for a double stroke, let's say, all right? A double stroke, bounce, pull, snap, okay? So I'm snapping into the drum like this, but I can't do that unless I'm pulling back here. So here's one little cool exercise. This is right out of the school. This is a Freddy Gruber exercise, okay? And it's basically allowing the stick to rest on the back 3 fingers, taking your thumb and your index off and pulling up this way. So I'm pulling up and I'm training the back to snap, okay? So that alleviates this snapping into the front, so I snap from the back, okay? So it allows me to get big open doubles when I'm playing on the snare drum, for example. Right, so there's a lot of advantages to learning how to use the back of the hand. Okay, so there's a couple of things that you can check out. You can check out your seating position, understanding how to get the balance and the rebound and the bounce, controlling with more of the hand. American position using your wrist. Okay, for single strokes, practicing controlled strokes for soft playing around the kit. Right, if you're playing versus loud, where open strokes become necessary, okay? But I'm not, this is all honestly very easy to do in comparison to holding on tight, focusing in the front and doing this upstroke, downstroke thing. So yeah, like that. That's kind of a synopsis of the technique course in general on the school. Like I said, it gets very detailed, man. We have many hours of material up there. So, yeah. What's up, Steve? You got a
question? Yeah. And I hope I say your name right. I'm sorry. But Dag Harad Anderson had a question about how what you're talking about can prevent injury, which you alluded to for a minute, but I know it's a big part of this.
Yeah. Well, in my opinion, like I said, when we're talking about the body, and we're talking about energy flow because this is what this is all about. It's about allowing the stick to carry the energy. Think of a bouncing ball, okay? If you bounce the ball, when we put the ball in motion down to the floor, we're done, right? You give energy to the ball. The ball's going down. It rebounds off the surface by itself, comes up into your hand, and to maintain that, the ball is carrying most of the energy. We have very little to do with maintaining that. This is a very similar approach. Now visualize this. If I was holding on to the ball and taking it all the way down to the floor and doing this, okay? That's the same as a downstroke, upstroke, holding from here so that I'm doing all the work. I'm not allowing that ball or the stick to bounce. The thing that does is it puts a lot of strain on your hand. It's tightening everything up in your arms. All right, and the whole approach is that you're stopping energy. You're stopping everything from working, so it's just one big conflict, actually, okay? By letting go and letting the stick bounce like that ball, I'm letting the stick carry, I'm letting it carry the energy, okay? So in a sense of alleviating injury, what I'm allowing the stick to do is its thing. I'm allowing the laws of physics to take place so that it bounces. Even in a controlled situation, soft, it's still the process of this in hand, all right? But especially for louder playing, all right, when I'm doing that type of stuff, okay, when I'm playing that way, I'm letting that bounce happen, okay? And it's all focused from that middle finger and thumb of fulcrum keeping this open, this is an important kind of an important proponent here, is that the grip is there. You can see the space through the hand that, it's like that. So if this closes down, that's when you get into this instead of this. All right. So it's basically obvious, I think, that this way is far less restrictive. It's far more conducive to a relaxing, easier way to play. Of course, with control. You need that first finger on the stick. In fact, I like to view it as kind of a triangle position, where you have thumb, index, middle, and then the back of the hand too. So, it is a 5-finger grip to say, but and I always try to teach to keep the fingers on the stick, all of them at all times, if you can. All right, that's the best way to manipulate evenly on the stick instead of clamping down to try to do that. Then the back of the hand comes off, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that's the whole idea with alleviating injury, is that you're making it easy. You're giving the stick more responsibility of the energy of creating strokes, music, grooves, whatever. Yeah.
All right, great. So another question. Luca said, and this I think pertains more to the school in general. You can see on the screen we have the Dave Weckl online school, and you've been putting a lot of energy into this. And he said you covered a lot of this kind of stuff in Back to Basics and then in the Natural Evolution series. So how has that changed over the years you're playing, that you have all this new material? How has it progressed?
Right. Well, in the Back to Basics stuff, which, we're talking 100 years ago, it feels like, for me anyway, we're talking late 80s for Back to Basics. And, for all intents and purposes, I was in my late 20s when I did those videos. I had yet to meet or get a lot of info from people like Jim Chapin, and a lot of, and Freddy Gruber certainly. My schooling was, as far as approach with hands and all that stuff, was kind of limited to front of the hand stuff. And you might notice if you do watch the Back to Basics stuff, I don't even talk about the wrists. Okay, I was talking primarily about finger control, which is great. I was taught this from Jim Petersack, when I was 15. And Jim and I go way back. He was a teacher at Potsdam College in New York. So, but I was talking about that. So I wasn't even talking about wrist strokes, American positioning, and this is all part of my education. Guys like Dom Famularo, man, in fact, he makes a cameo appearance in the school where I basically interview him, and his knowledge of the history is incredible. And he was a student of Jim Chapin's, who was a student of Sanford Moeller. So I learned the Moeller technique from one of the sources in the beginning, from Jim Chapin. So, the answer to the question is I'm hopefully constantly evolving, constantly learning, constantly understanding different ways to manipulate the stick that in 1988 I didn't know about, and I didn't have that knowledge. I didn't understand what it was, and that's the beauty of this instrument and life in general, is that we know what we know at the moment, so that's what we talk about, and hopefully you continue the pursuit of knowledge through study, through through research, digging out, especially now we have YouTube. Back when I was growing up, there was no internet, man. We couldn't see who we wanted to see then. Now it's a plethora of information available that if you approach all this with the positive attitude to try to go and investigate, really search it out, study, understand what it is coming from the history. You don't have to play traditional, it doesn't matter. It's about understanding the cultures of music, the history of the players that really devised these ways of playing, starting with George Lawrence Stone, Moeller, all the guys that created these techniques and taught them, and guys like Buddy Rich used them. So it's it's going back to the history of it all, and And for me, it's just fascinating. And if you get into it, so the Natural Evolution video series back in the year 2000. Now we're going back 20 years. So Freddy Gruber makes an appearance on those videos, and I was pretty just coming out of studying with Freddy quite a bit at that point. So all of the stuff that I'm talking about now is kind of still current, but it's always still a work in progress. So because, like I said, at the end of the day, it's not about the technique. It's about how you feel at the kit to play the music you want to play, so that you can extract the feel that you want to have happen. And the technique is just a means to an end. It allows you to play things that you couldn't play if you don't develop certain technical things. So that's kind of the best answer I got for that at this point.
Yeah.
Constant
The good thing
evolution.
and the good thing about the online school is that as you continue to evolve, we update the school. I mean, we're adding stuff all the time. So it's like a real benefit is that it's not something just on a DVD, you have it and it's set in stone. You're doing a lot of interactive stuff too on the Facebook.
Yeah, right. That's right. Yeah, it's one of the coolest things about our school is that we have a Facebook page that is it's a private group page only for the students in the school. I'm in there all the time. Guys are uploading, people, girls, everybody that's in the school are uploading videos of them playing. Everybody chimes in and talks about it. It's a real community. It's a community for inspiration to learn, and that's a fun part for me is getting in there and being able to kind of communicate with everybody, and so it's a nice part of what we offer with the school.
Before I forget, so this month, all throughout the month, anybody who signs up for the school, we're going to give them, from your convergence record, full download of all the play along packages that are on this product. Pretty cool.
Wow. Yeah,
so
that's a nice giveaway there, Orkin. Good.
It kind of is. I know. Am I allowed to give this away?
Yeah. Well, it's you're the admin, so okay.
There you go.
Great.
Yeah, but we'll do it as a download. So anybody who signs up, right there on the screen, you can see where you can sign up for Dave's school. It's $30 a month. You can cancel anytime. If you join, we'll send you a link to download this. And then also you get to go into the Facebook group where, as I understand it, every day I see Dave, you're like checking in there, you're commenting on people's videos, you're answering questions for them. It's kind of a cool thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I said, it becomes a little bit interactive that way. So, and I'm in there as often as I can to critique and answer, and just check out what everybody's doing. And plus, there's the intergroup communication. The guys in there, everybody's talking to one another, helping each other out with recommendations of gear, of playing, and it's beautiful. It's a nice, it's kind of a dream for me that has come true, to be able to offer this kind of thing for those interested, and then be able to take part in the dialogue, in the one-on-one with people. So it's cool.
I want to show people for a second. Now this is a little dangerous, but I'm going to try the screen share. Show them what the school looks like, because you have so many different courses available. So let's see if so do you see that?
Yeah.
So you can see all the courses available on there, and it scrolls way down the page. We cover some cool stuff, and I wanted to ask you, there's a full mixing course in there, and there's a full drum recording course in there. I know we're getting a little bit off the topic of hands, but tell us a little bit about that course, because a lot of people, and I'm seeing questions in the window here about how you get your sound. Some of it comes from the way you're playing, but also the way you make your kit and all that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah. Well, as we know, which is what I tell everybody that hits me up for recording advice. It's the old adage of "fix it in the mix" is not that applicable. Okay. It always starts with, first of all, well, they kind of go together: the instrument and the person playing it. It's your touch. It's how you I should say how I envision the sound, and that goes into a song by song aspect for me. If I get asked to record anything, When I'm listening to the demo or I'm hearing the track, it's like I'm envisioning, how the sound of the drums, not necessarily how Dave Weckl should sound in there, but how the drum part, how the drum sound should be. And then I start thinking about, maybe use a little thinner cymbal, maybe tune the drums higher. Do I want to use a different size bass drum, which I'm fortunate to have choices of 18s or 20s if I want to change from a 22 Fusion setup. I'll use my smaller jazz bass drum, tune it differently. Do I want to, put the snare over here instead of the floor tom? Do I want to add, blocks, bells, sounds to the kit that will enhance the groove, enhance the feel of the music, enhance the presentation? So it always starts with the person, the drums. Then we get into the external sources. What room are you in? That's a huge one. It's like, are you in a place where there's reflections going all over the place? Not usually a good idea, if you want to try to capture your sound, if the microphones are hearing the room and it's not a good sounding room. So it's always better to have a dead room as opposed to a not good sounding live room where there's too many reflections going on. So I'll tell you an easy way to handle that. In my room in Italy, I did it the most inexpensive way that I could, which was after the walls were built. I simply went to IKEA and bought, heavy duty felt curtains, put up rods, and then I could pull the curtains away if I want more reflection, if I want, a little brighter sound versus a more dead sound. So that's one way to handle, turning your room into different and controlling your room. Of course, then it comes down to the mics. I'd endorse Shure microphones. So I've been using these old Beta 98s on here, which you can see one here. These are SM98s. These are the very old ones, and I still love the sound of these. So I'm sticking with them. That's what I like to use. I always use an SM57 on the snare. I'll use KSM 44s for overhead. Sometimes on live, I'll use KSM 141s. 141, yeah. Beta 52s on the kick. I use an inside one and an outside one because I do use the hole is small, so the sound of the drum I want it to excuse me, have a sound. Using my muffling system from Remo, two of them. There's a felt kind of croissant looking thing that goes inside, and then I have an external muffler as well that I use, especially for the smaller bass drums. Those are both Remo products. So, then we get into the tuning of the drums, and I will say this for tuning, because there's a whole tuning course as well that starts from scratch about how I approach different tunings. But in general, okay, I'm always going to have bottom heads a little bit higher than the tops. The reason for this is because the way I sort of look at it in my layman terms of, of doing this is that, the bottom head holds the sound, and it has so much to do with the tone. And if you tune that bottom head lower, it doesn't give the drum as much of a chance to respond from that bottom head tone. So when your microphone is right on the head, you're going to get the attack from that mic. The bottom head is going to have its tone, but the top head ringing is the last thing the mic will hear. So I always like to have a little bit of pitch bend in my sound. So if I just hit this drum, for example, you can kind of hear that it's bam, bam, because it's going, right? It's going top, bottom, top. Like I said, that's my very unscientific explanation. But then it comes down to the tuning. Sometimes I think about pitch of the notes when I'm doing songs. Snare drum especially, the bottom head is definitely pretty up there. And I generally control the pitch and the sound and the feel of the snare from the top, because the bottom head tight gives the snare that pop and that crack. Also, the snares respond much better if the bottom head is tighter. If it's looser, it kind of grabs the snares, chokes them, and makes it very difficult to play, in my opinion. then there's, of course, the recording process. And like I said, with the recording course, I give some basic ideas. I don't really profess, that I'm, some great recording mixing engineer, but it's certainly a love and a passion of mine that has turned into a sideline career. And so I've mixed and produced my own projects for years. I'm doing it for other people now. It's another thing that I'm constantly learning, constantly experimenting, and learning about it. So and getting in there and doing it. So the recording mixing course in the school gives a little bit of insight as to how I do things with the drum sound. But basically, the whole thing is about a vision, and that's understanding, first of all, how to get that with the touch and the hands, because that's where it does start. Example, okay? If I, and a lot of this gets back to how you think about the groove and what you want to create, which comes from internalizing first. You got to have this inside. So that's why one of the most important things I always talk about when it comes time to take the hand technique and put it into grooves is, how are you going to express the emotion, all right? Because if I just sing to myself, boom, bop, boom, bop, boom, that's what I'm going to sound like. Which is not very expressive. So, but if I go, gat, 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 and I'm singing the feel, then I can kind of, okay, how do I get that sound, right? So from this to this, okay, so in order to pull that off, there's technical things happening, especially with the left hand, that are imperative to understand. Traditional grip, the way that I get that consistency is control after the stroke, all right? 2 control points, one there and one here, okay? That keeps the geometry of things right. I see a lot of guys trying to play traditional grip like this, okay? They're out here, when they get on like I talked about that V shape before. You don't want to be up like this with traditional grip. You want it to be back here, coming out in that V like you are with, with match grip, okay? So it's this position, thumb, in line with the arm, in this way up for the strokes. That's where that consistency of the backbeat comes from, and you cannot get it if you're not getting that control aspect in the hand between these two. So a lot of the whole sound thing always comes back to the vision of it, the ability to get it with the technique, and the understanding of sound and how to change it and how to manipulate it, okay? Let's talk about the hi-hat for a second. I mean, just practicing this voice with technical aspects of shoulder, tip, molar technique, I mean, man, you can get a lot of sounds out of this. Turned off my mic here. So that's all an intention of sound and how to get it. And it starts with everything we were talking about earlier, all that technical stuff of, right? Using, there's a lot of history there, right? There's wrists, there's some fingers, there's molar technique of accents and stuff like that. So it's all part of the process of, vision, ability, application of what you're going to do with it for the music. Yeah, so that's kind of my take on it.
Great answer.
Yeah. Cool. Any more questions out there we want to address?
So there's about 2,000 comments on here.
2,000. Geez, that all?
So thank you everyone for joining.
Yeah, thanks for coming out, guys. That's great. Awesome.
Yeah, about 2,000 people watching. So there are some really good questions. Number one, though, I want to say hi to Chris Castillo, who's watching us. There are a lot of people saying hello. We can't get to everyone, but he's a good friend of yours.
Hey, Chris.
He's out there somewhere. But another question, it doesn't pertain to anything like this, but some people just may want to know. Adam Mars, who's asked a lot of really good questions, asked about your experience with Madonna. And there's a lot of misunderstanding as to what you did on the track with Madonna. So, what did you do?
Well, we're talking about year 1984, probably. And there was a period in there before I left to go with Chick, which was basically 85. And then onward from there, I was kind of gone from New York and from the scene of the studio scene, which I was really trying to get into at the time. And and I started doing a lot of work with this great producer, guitar player that is still really active and, you know, great guy and very, you know, he's still really into what he's doing. And and I'm hoping to hook up with him again through a friend of mine, Philippe Sace, that we just did a project together. This guy's name is Nile Rodgers. Maybe you've heard of him. But he was producing a lot of people back in the 80s. And for some reason, he liked me. So he was calling me for everything. And one of the first things he called me for was an overdub, okay, on the Madonna Like a Virgin record. Now, I'm going to set it straight here. I did not play drums on this record, all right? That was mostly Tony, the late, great Tony Thompson, okay? He played a lot of the drums, but I played a rototom overdub part on this kind of triplet groove. I don't even remember the song, but it was one of the songs on there. And I remember the experience. I walked into the studio power station in New York, and Madonna was sitting behind the console, and Nile Rodgers was like up on the platform playing a synclavier, which is this keyboard that one of the first sampling keyboards back in the day. And he's punching notes, and I'm hearing Madonna's voice, background vocals, and that was my first experience at like sampled voice. You know, that there wasn't really, you know, to achieve some of the background stuff, they weren't doing it all live. So I was like, wow, okay. So that was my experience. You know, I said hi to Madonna. She said hi. That was it. I did the thing and left. So that was my, that was kind of my experience in my with the Madonna overdub that I did. But together with Nile Rodgers, I also played on a Diana Ross record. I did a George Benson thing. I did a Peebo Bryson thing, and I did a Robert Plant thing actually, which was
the Honey
great.
Drippers.
The Honey Drippers,
Right?
yeah. We did the Honey Drippers. Rockin' at Midnight was certainly one of the tunes that made the record, which is a shuffle groove. And it was Nile and Jeff Beck and Wayne Pezwater was the bass player. And I think Paul Schaefer was on the session too. So it was, you know, that's what I mean. Those were my session days in New York. And yeah, so that's you know, that was the whole story with my studio pop career, as it were.
Now, you were in school at that time, or was
No,
that after
no,
school?
no. I didn't last too long in school. I was at University of Bridgeport in Connecticut, and we had a fantastic jazz band there. Neil Slater was the director, and I met all of my, you know, great friend players there in that school, which, you know, guys like Paul Adamy and Fred Vigdor, who's with the Average White Band sometimes, and a lot of guys from that band. And we got together with some guys in New York. Andy Block and Brendan O'Keefe were part of this group that we, and Joe Bonadio eventually got in the group, another great drummer, Night Sprite. So Night Sprite was, you know, that was the band that sort of gave me my break, as it were, because Andy was studying with the great Steve Kahn, guitar player, and at the time, Peter Erskine was either living close or with or somewhere near in New York, and I had been in touch with Peter off and on. And, you know, anyway, they came to the gig at 7th Avenue South, which was in New York City, which was owned by the Brecker Brothers at the time. And Peter saw that gig and kind of hired me for my first big New York City band gig. Called the band was French Toast, which became the Michel Camillo Band. So that was kind of the beginning of it. We're talking 1980, 82, 83, somewhere around there. That led to the Simon and Garfunkel tour. So that's kind of the story. And then Chick saw me with Bill Connors and Tom Kennedy, my mate from St. Louis. And yeah, the rest is history. Electric band, acoustic band, like that.
So Peter tells that story on this movie.
Yeah,
Fuzz on the studio wall. So he tells his version of it. By the way, this entire movie is in the Dave Weckl online school. So if you sign up for the school, you can watch the whole movie. You don't need the DVD. But it's funny because from his angle, he really saw it as an advantage to recommend you for that gig because he thought you could totally handle it. Maybe even a little better than he was at
Yeah.
that moment. There was a lot
I'll
of
tell you, man, Peter. I never heard that story from Peter, and when I saw that, I was crying. I was like, oh my god, it was really cool of Peter to do that. So, but yeah, that was the beginning of it all. Yeah, the flies on the studio wall thing is the whole back stage, behind the scenes footage of making Convergence. So my daughter's on there, Claire was singing, and my wife's on there. We're all playing the Cup song, and it's really a great video. Actually, there's a lot of stuff in there. So yeah, that's part of the school. Exactly. All right.
so
Hey,
you,
I saw a question here
yeah.
from Tom C. He said, "How do you strengthen your weakest hand?" Okay, very easy answer for that. Practice it twice as much. I know it sounds like the obvious, ridiculous answer, but that's it. You have to train the muscle memory of the hand that's weakest. All right. If you don't do that, they're never going to be equal. So the idea is to get your hands feeling the same. In order to do that, if you're not born ambidextrous, if you're not born with and I certainly wasn't, to play. I don't play match grip hardly at all. I did go through a period where I practiced it to get some kind of muscle memory going with this, to be comfortable so that I could do finger control, do different things. But it's really about just spending the time. And I think one of the things that you should know and think about is that a lot of people get upset and unhappy about not being able to practice on the drum kit. And I got to tell you, man, so much of my technical development, especially with this hand, happened everywhere. I mean, anytime I could get a stick in my hand, I remember on the floor in my living room, watching Johnny Carson or something, waiting for Buddy Rich to come on, for example. I had a practice pad and I was on the floor just going at it with the hand. So you can develop this muscle memory stuff by slowly practicing it away from the drum set. You don't have to make noise if that's a problem. You don't have to spend the time doing that on the kit. When you're on the kit, you can practice the kit. That's when you should be practicing your feels, understanding, learning about, great Brazilian rhythms. I just saw this great video come across my feed this morning of Kiko Freitas, which is he's an old friend of mine that I remember when he was very young and just learning, and man, he has turned into an amazing player. So if you want to learn about Brazilian rhythms, that's what I mean. That's the time that you should be studying all the feels and practicing your sound and practicing how to get comfortable on the kit. Taking the foundation that you practice over here with all this technical stuff of getting your comfort zone together, how are you going to apply that when it comes time to play a groove? Okay. That's how you develop the weak hand. Spend time on it, much more than the other one. Yeah.
Great answer. I want to go back to Nile Rodgers for a second. What do you think it is about your playing or your approach that made you attractive as a drummer to come in and do sessions for him? Why would he call you? What is it about a drummer that a guy like him, who's very well known, want to keep coming back to you again and again?
Well, I think a lot of it was, I happened to be at the right place at the right time, in New York City, that my reputation, because of a couple gigs, and a lot of it, I got to tell you, had to do with the great bass player Anthony Jackson. Okay, this guy, first of all, he's one of the greatest ever. He played with Buddy Rich. He played. If you ever heard "Money, Money, Money," money, 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 that bass line, that's Anthony, man. He's Anyway, it was one of my dreams to play with Anthony. And once I started with the French Toast gig, Michel Camillo, Anthony started recommending me for everything in New York, which led to the Simon and Garfunkel gig, which led to all the studio work, led for getting the calls to play with people, because the reputation preceded itself. And this is what people, you got to understand this as young players. It's like, I hear the questions a lot, man, how do I get known? It's like, really, you get known by two things. Number one, get good, really get good, practice, study, absorb, practice, absorb, practice, 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 play, 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 play with as many people as you can. That's not so easy right now. But this is the time to study the foundational aspects of getting your stuff together on the kit. And let's face it, this is all about muscle memory, repetitive practice, so that things like independence, studying grooves, feels, all that type of stuff. There's so much, as Vinny Colaiuta once said. I think he said something in one interview. He said, "Yeah, I think most people have no idea what it takes." And to a point, he's right. I mean, it takes so much. And so when people say, "I don't know what to practice," I'm like, really? Man, just sit out, go through YouTube one day and just go through every possible feel and drummer from the past to the present. And it's like you're going to get so much of an idea of what to practice, because there's so much to learn. It's almost overwhelming, which is why the foundation is so important, in my opinion. Okay, you got the technical foundation. Listening is a big part of a foundational development to understand different cultures, different style, the history, current of what's going on. And there's so much to listen to and to learn. So yeah, it's about putting all those together, to get to that point where, when you get your shot, when you get that moment of time when somebody does call you. And I mean, it's not kind of the same as it was then. There was no YouTube. There was, our demos were cassettes and letters. And, cassettes, or we used to call them reels. Singers would call them reels, like a demo. And you'd walk around to studios and give them to people. That's literally how people got work back in the 80s. But word of mouth is everything. When I got that shot, thanks to Anthony Jackson, and I started working with people, it was Michael Brecker, the late great Michael Brecker, that recommended me to Chick, along with Tanya Marie and some others. So it was just that word of mouth that that Nile Rodgers heard about me. He gave me the opportunity. He liked what I did, so he kept calling me, and that's kind of how it works. So it's a lesson to be learned. You want to be ready when you have that shot. So spend the time practicing to get ready. That's my advice.
When I have to think, it probably had a little to do with the way you did your business, coming prepared, coming on time, all those kinds of things as well.
I was such a good guy, good boy, as it were, to the place of boring. I mean, it's like I never smoked a joint in my life. It's like I didn't want anything to do with drugs. It was like, man, I didn't want to do any of that stuff, and I never have. So it kind of kept me in a position, and I credit the timing of all of that, because during my period of coming in, it's like there was a lot of drug issues in the business in New York City, and most everybody was going through rehab, getting cleaned up, and getting healthy. And it's so beautiful that a lot of those people that I know, that I got to work with and play with, they all got clean, and they're still playing unbelievably great today. So, having that together. Being in a situation where you take care of your health, you take care of your body. I mean, this is hard enough without outside influence. So stay clean, stay straight, get to the business of playing, and put that into the energy of playing was always my motto. So, and then yes, from the business standpoint, it's, show up on time, make sure that everything is handled that needs to be handled. Don't be a jerk. All those things go into it. And man, I mean, we're talking about life. We're talking about life lessons here of how to act, how to be. Not so easy sometimes. We all get angry. We all get upset. It's so you gotta learn how to treat people, how to be passionate, how to state the ideas in a constructive way, without maybe so much of the passion that translates into anger. So you gotta. Those are all things to learn as you get older. But, the rule that, that I guess everybody should, that me included, treat people like you want to be treated. So, always envision from the other side. And, I think back when I was young, like I said, I was very shy and humble. I didn't have a big mouth about my talent of whatever I thought it was, or I always considered myself a student. I still do. So it's not something to say, hey, I'm great. You let your playing do the talking for that, and otherwise just be cool. That's my motto anyway.
Well, you definitely do that. So I'll be the one to say that the online school is fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic. And I'm seeing a lot of people who are in the school in the comments here just saying how great it's been for them. So we
Awesome.
we welcome everybody to sign up for it if you want. It's $30 a month. It's similar to some of the other services out there, except that you're with Dave, and that means you're just spending the time getting inside one approach. It can be a little distracting, I think, to have too many things going on at one time. And if you sit, it's my opinion, and watch. And I've been with you when we're filming this, and I'm watching, and I'm like, why don't I play drums anymore? Because if I was just doing what you're doing and spending the time, I'd get better. And I think a lot of people have gotten better just really getting inside of what you're doing. We do that in the school. There's about 40 hours of content in there. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
there's a lot
Well,
there.
yeah, for my teaching thing, there's always been, for me, it's about the music. How do the drums fit into the music? It's not just about the technical aspect, okay? And I get maybe confused I think about that a lot. And of course I think about it, it's the foundation, but for me, it's trying to become the most musical drummer that you can be. So a lot of the stuff in the courses in the school have to do with music. There's a lot of play-alongs. It's always taking the foundational aspects of technique or whatever it might be, and applying it to grooves. I'm seeing a lot of comments about Latin stuff. So, it's all anything. It's there's any style. There's technical things involved to make it happen, right? So, a lot of that, it's, yeah, sure, there's some technique involved with what I'm doing with the right hand on the rim, but man, a lot of that is understanding the feel, and, as a non-Latin guy that grew up in that culture, it's hard to get that feel without really studying it and trying to understand the marriage of 6/8 and 4/4 and all that, the triplet and the 16th note in this kind of style. So there's there's so much in the school that's really cool, but like I said, it's about that application, and that's of the foundation to the music, and that's to me the focus and what we try to talk about and project in the school. Yeah,
Awesome. Well, we've hit about the 1 hour mark here, and
cool.
I want to thank everybody for coming, and also tell everyone that I think, if it's okay with you, we're going to do this next weekend and maybe look at another area of the school.
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah,
What?
we're going to come back with some stuff, probably more about grooves and feels and stuff like that next week. Yeah,
Yeah. All right. Well, let's definitely do that. All right.
cool.
Well, guys, first of all, I just want to thank everybody from the online school who I've seen in here for showing up. There's a ton of people in here, and everybody
Awesome.
from like all over the world. I'm seeing so many people here, including Sergio, who said who's mentioning about Kiko Fritas.
Yeah.
And there's some people from Brazil here who I think are very appreciative of you mentioning Kiko.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. I mean, man, it's like I said, I've known Kiko since like he was a kid, and he was just always so nice and kind, and just a student of the instrument. But he has developed into a really, really mature, great player. And you want to talk about feel, man. You want to study Brazilian, go there. That's Kiko's got it going on, man. It's really great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so I'll just remind everyone, if you sign up during the month of November, we're going to give you a download of Dave's entire play along for Convergence. So try out the school if you want to. You just go to daveweckl.teachable.com, and that's right on the screen there. And Dave, I don't know, I think people want you to play again. So maybe we could just sort of do an outro here of you playing, and I'll go away.
Okay, we'll do a little bit of that since there's a lot of talk on Latin soloing and Latin feels. I'll get into it 'cause it's obviously some of my favorite stuff to play as well from all of my influence of Cuban and those type of styles. So love that type of music. So thank you everybody. I appreciate you being here. Appreciate the continued support, and I hope to see you in the school. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Ciao. All right, there it is. Thanks everybody once again. Ciao.